Hey fans, welcome back to another issue of the Multiverse Presents. No, it's not Presents, it's Showcase.
This is a showcase
This
one.
is a showcase. Yeah, we've been talking about the other. Co-host Prof. Kreitz, I'm here with Mick the Professional, and
Heyo.
we've got some cool stuff to talk about, some interesting stuff to talk about compared to what's been going on in San Diego and all that. So let's jump into some of this stuff. First off, what new has come into the shop? You're dying to talk about it.
Oh, I can't fathom this. Okay, so anytime new comic comes out, at least on the Marvel side, we get all kinds of like promotional stuff for it, right? Flyers or posters or booklets and all kinds
Cool
of
statues, posters.
No, none of the cool stuff. It's all the junk that weighs the box down that makes me pay extra for shipping. Thanks, guys. But the most unique, I guess, promo is what you want to call it.
I'd call it a new low, personally, but
So if you have read House of X #1, you know that the X-Men are using a plant in order to teleport and travel from point A to point B. They're calling this,
Krakoa.
I guess Krakoa seeds that they're planting. Well, as a promotion, Marvel, in their infinite wisdom, has sent us packs of seeds to give out to people. Now they're branded as Krakoa seeds, House of X #1 with all the promos, and the little tagline says "Sowing the Seeds of Tomorrow." But if you look at the back, Bachelor's Buttons, also known as cornflower.
Or if you grew up on a farm like me, that's what we call weeds. Okay.
So I find it odd that we got two different sets of these, one with the House of X and one with Powers of X. And they came in bundles of 25, so I got 50 packs of seeds. Listen, that's the seeds in the pack of tomorrow. Weirdest promo ever. Weirdest promo ever, I think. I don't know of any other promos that we've ever gotten or that I've ever seen, like even in the past from, other shops and things. I mean, we would get maybe some suckers or pins or leaflets or, sometimes little mini folded posters and things of that nature. Green Lantern rings or...
I remember the days of the Green Lantern rings.
Now I'm getting seeds. So weird. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, that was the promo of the week. I don't really understand what they were thinking there. I guess somebody thought, well, they're using seeds in the comic. It'd be pretty cool to do that. Why don't we give them seeds? Weed seeds.
Being stewards of the future.
I guess so. So anyway, other than that, we did actually have some really cool books come in this week. We had a Batman 251, graded at a 2.5, and first Neil Adams Batman. That book was super cool.
Yeah.
The Green Lantern 76, autographed by Neil Adams, also slabbed at CGC 3.0 with a gold label, so it was verified. Very cool books. The Deadpool New Mutants 98 came and gone. We had an ASM 129 in amazing shape. Come and go. This stuff it's hot, man. I mean, we can't keep some of this stuff in. It's gone. New books came in at a variety of new books. I kind of felt like it was a small week. Fifth Wednesday of the month. You don't always get the big guns on the fifth Wednesday of the month, but
right.
The cool part on that one though is that there was some much anticipated stories coming out. The last issue of the Batman Who Laughs came out today. Last Night on Earth Part 2, which was another big one. what else we got? The one cool one that I was kind of excited about was the Red Hood Annual. I don't know if you kept up with the new Red Hood line since Rebirth.
I have not.
Well, they kind of made it an anti-Trinity book, which was pretty cool. So it was like the Red Hood, Bizarro, and Artemis.
Okay, I get you.
So they were a little bit, more brutal and whatnot, and it just kind of ended with not really knowing what's going on. And this one goes back and fills in the gaps of what happened with Artemis and Bizarro and stuff, so you know what's going on, which is pretty cool. The artwork is okay. The story's pretty cool. The cover artwork's pretty cool.
Who was the author and stuff on that?
Let's see. I'm going to have to look it up because I don't really remember offhand who did everything on that one. Where's the accreditation in these books now? They're putting them in the back. That's super weird. Oh, look, there's Dan. How do we pronounce his name now? Not Didio. It's
Didio, apparently.
Didio is how he wants to be called now. That's an interesting name to bring up in the back of a book real quick because I think we had some stuff to talk about with him today.
Yes, and we will be getting to his Collider interview here.
Oh, Sinestro, Year of the Villains, and the Black Mask, Year of the Villains are coming up too, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Bizarro book, Red Hood, pick it up, check it out, it's cool. But by far last week, and I didn't mention this, last week we had another Freedom Fighters come out. Best book DC's putting out right now.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty solid book.
Can't beat it.
But it's a 12-issue series, right?
Yes, it is. And we are on number 7. So we're a little over halfway through. As of today, Powers of X, though. This is the future companion of House of X. Now, I want to say, Marvel, I'm getting some interesting reviews on how this whole thing is working. People are very split. I mean, they're super polarized. They either hate this book or they love it.
I've heard more hate than love, personally, but, in this day and age, it's hard to...
there's this book suffers, as I'm flipping through it right now, this book suffers from one thing that I see consistently in Marvel books right now. There are no backgrounds in most of these panels.
Yeah.
You get a character drawing or two characters in a panel, and you might get a yellow box or a white background, or maybe it's beige or mauve. There's no detail in this artwork. The big explosion scenes are just multicolors jumping out. What happened to the days of making sure that somebody could draw a background image before we got them to do a book? I mean, this is going on a lot lately.
Well, it's funny because I have been revisiting the New Gods. I have almost an entire collection of New Gods stuff, Forever People and all that. I'm missing just a couple of issues, and they're not even keys. It's funny because I've been going back. I've been reading the New Gods at night before I go to bed, and it's amazing to kind of revisit Kirby again. And he was actually not just a good artist, but at least a solid writer by today's standards. And it's just been really cool to you look down at that little tagline that says, created, drawn, and written by Jack Kirby, and that some of these big iconic characters like Orion and Light Ray and Darkseid and Caliban and all those are solely his creation out of his imagination. And the one thing that Kirby stuff never lacked is background art and all that. I mean, there are even times where it's like almost detrimental. Like there's literally so much going on the page that you have to stop and take a minute to take in and figure out what it is you're looking at.
Well, even if you look at Kirby's space sequences,
mm-hmm.
There's so much detail in space.
Yeah.
These guys that are turning this stuff out today, I don't understand I mean, most of these guys are old enough that when they were younger, they had to have been reading some of the Kirby stuff, or some of the guys that came after Kirby who were reading Kirby. I mean, even Jim Lee puts a ton of detail in his background, right?
Right.
So the guys that are brand new today should have at least been reading Jim Lee in the 90s.
Well, and the other thing, like I just got done reading the issue where they have the Leviathan and Orion and Light Ray have to defeat the Leviathan. I don't know if you remember that story or not, but basically what ends up happening is this yacht gets sunk, and there's a guy and his son and his daughter that were on the yacht, and Orion rescues them and takes them to the place where the bad guys, which in this case was the Deep Six, were about to fight it out with them. Anyways, to make a long story short, the kid is a conscientious objector, and his dad was a veteran from Normandy. And so it was funny because Kirby actually took this kind of backstory, and he did make a political statement about it, kind of, when you consider when that book was written and everything. But what was cool about it, and kind of to wrap it up, the kid gets killed, even though he was a conscientious objector, and Light Ray and Orion said, we're going to bury him like the gods because he's, as much of a warrior as we are, because he basically defended his family and, fell even though he was not, a supporter of violence. And it's like, see, that's how you really deal with political issues and stuff. That wasn't in the forefront. What was in the forefront was fighting the Leviathan and all that. But right. Saying this underlying kind of backstory that made a political statement for the time. Of course, that was obviously talking about Vietnam and that kind of stuff. But it just kind of made me pause and go, gosh, you remember those days when we had that kind of writing going on in the books where, we didn't have people just like slapping you about the face with all kinds of political ideology and that kind of stuff. It was just like, we can still address these issues, but let's talk about Orion beating the Leviathan,
Yeah, and, there were guys that, in that era, that were masters at that.
Yeah.
And, you look at Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, same type of stuff, man. They took on the drug war and all that stuff. They did all kinds of... that was the whole point of Green Lantern, Green Arrow, was to get Hal Jordan out of his space cop mindset and to make sure that everything at home was being taken care of. But what they found out through the whole run, that Green Arrow had a lot to atone for too,
right,
on the run, and there was a lot of conflict between the two of them, even though they're buddies.
Right. Yeah.
And a couple of snarky moments on covers.
Yeah. Awesome.
But those guys were masters of what they did, and especially Kirby. I mean, if you look at Kirby's work, not just as an artist, but as a writer and the characters and stuff that he created, the whole New Gods everything is such a linchpin in DC mythos that it's referenced constantly, and it's never not going to be.
Well, and the thing that kind of made me chuckle about this as I was reading through that particular issue was, Kirby's always known as an artist, but people don't really talk about him much as a writer either. And I think that perhaps they should, because, again, by today's standards, I'm not sure about some of these people that are getting these jobs writing some of these comics, because not enough substance.
No, and some of the work that's being turned out is really haphazardly. Like, when a writer says, if the continuity that you're working in doesn't fit the story you're writing, throw out the continuity. That bothers me, because that takes away from the characters and the journey that they've gone through so far.
Well, then the complete understanding of what does it mean to be canon. People just say, well, we'll just put something new in there, then I'll make it canon. If it runs against all the stuff that comes before it, then it's not going to be canon, no matter how you describe it. and definitely like something that's said in an interview that's not really appeared in print is not going to be canon, which is what we ran into with the Doctor Who debacle. Because things were said in an interview. Wouldn't it be cool if this happened or that happened, and then in reality that was never canon? Canon was actually completely different. Okay, so shift gears here a little bit. We mentioned it earlier on, but Dan DiDio.
Oh, the DiDio.
His interview on Collider, which is another media source, and it was an intriguing interview because he talked about kind of where DC Comics is at this point and what the plans are they had and everything. Some of the interview could have been followed up on a little bit better, in my opinion, but hey, it is what it is.
The guy kind of let him dodge some questions, like he was a politician.
Questions. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, oh, hey, give me the good points and the bad points of this. And he's like, well, the good points are blah, blah, blah. Next question, please.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the question that was specifically dodged was what's selling well and what's not selling well. Well, we got the what's selling well, so let's talk about that.
Well, and the thing is it's right on the money. It's like it's this damn DC stuff that's selling in the stores, right? So you talked about Deceased, mega hit, man. Everybody's loving it. Like the idea of, and it's not so much, it's zombies, but it's not zombies kind of thing. And it was told in a DC way, right, with the anti-life equation. And we're, I think, 3 issues in right now.
Something like that.
I think it's a 6-issue run.
Why? There's like some strange dude sitting next to me. What's going on here?
Well, as we are at a store, and people do come in to buy things, sometimes they mosey back and sit in on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
So we've got Joe, the mechanic here.
Howdy.
Setting in. Now, he is an avid comic book reader.
I don't think he's a mechanic. He doesn't have any tools.
He just wears the shirts. So he definitely covers the Spider-Man base and stuff. But Joe, I think you're reading the Deceased book, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, but I haven't started yet. I usually wait till I get a few issues in just to...
Nothing wrong with that. But, and that's the thing, though, this appeal, though, crosses everything. And, it's kind of good timing. You mentioned this earlier about how it's convenient that this steps in right when Walking Dead bites it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like that jump on from Walking Dead to fill the zombie gap now, which is cool. And I don't know if either one of you guys have seen the solicitations for this yet, but Marvel's getting back into the zombie realm again.
Yeah, which is totally not them trying to get caught up. I mean, let's be honest.
What was the name of that book, too? It was something like The Infected or something weird like that. I'll have to look it up. We'll update you on that one the next time. But there's already a solicitation for 6 issues of that in the next previews. With Marvel playing catch up. And there's 1 billion covers.
Oh, what a shock.
Now, I will say, though, that Deceased does have 3 covers.
Right.
But it's brilliant the way that they're doing. And Dan, I know we'll get to this in a minute, but he talked in the interview about this too. But you've got your standard cover, which kind of has something to do with the story. There's a Virgin variant that's an artistic cover that has a character zombified in some way. And then there's a movie tribute cover to a horror film. The first one was from It, and it was like the Joker handing Robin a balloon. And the second one was Nightmare on Elm Street. It was Batman and Barbara Gordon, in the shattered mirror. Superman was on the third one. I believe it was from The Nun. The newest one that I saw in solicitations was Harley Quinn and Joker, I think. Or it might have been Harley and somebody else. But there was a bridge in the background, and the reflection is Harley turned around the other way screaming. And I'm not sure what horror movie that is because I'm not a horror movie guy. But it's a really cool cover.
Yeah.
And I think that appeal is also picking up on the guys who would not have normally read this book because it's a DC title. They will only read Tales from the Crypt type stuff.
Yeah. So he mentioned Deceased. He also talked about the young adult stuff. Kind of
so Naomi. Okay, so this one's a little. I'm a little perturbed with the Naomi book. I feel like it's more of a speculator book right now, and it's one of those that Bendis started out, and it was a 6-issue deal. Yes, it's a new character. Is it going to be a relevant new character? I don't know yet. Was the book a bad read? No, it wasn't a bad read. I just don't... So far, I didn't understand what was going on with it yet. But it looks like that she's jumping in the Justice League and helping those guys out. So I'm not sure where we're going with that one yet. But we'll wait and see. Okay. It was a 6-issue run, but they're rolling her into some other stuff. And she was really well received. Like, for a new book, it jumped up to like $300 in a week.
Yeah.
Right. Joe, do you read Naomi?
Yeah. No, I do not.
That's a shock. So, to kind of continue on with the interview, at one point they were asking Dan where did he see DC Comics in the future and all that, because we've talked a little bit about what sells and the young adult stuff and the Deceased and all that. And at one point, like, okay, so as a comic book person, as a comic book collector, like, I go into all these interviews and, like, as soon as I hear them say we need to be more diverse, like, immediately the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and I'm like, oh no, not this again. Okay, because it's just gotten out of control. But what was interesting, and I think you had a similar reaction, because I was when I played the interview for you, you had that look when he said that. It's like, uh-oh. Yeah.
Well, I definitely had that reaction, because every single time somebody says we need to be more diverse, let's say, like, we're talking about, Justice League or JSA or some classic team, Avengers or whatever. You know what's always happened in the past? We take the exact same characters that we have, but we change the character. Yeah. And there's nothing that makes me angrier than changing that character to fit some other mold that it does not fit in.
Right. And so that was what was interesting, because when he said that, immediately I was like, oh no. No, Dan, don't go that route. And then when he clarified things, I was like, okay, if he's going to go the route that I think he is, and again, this is where this interview kind of faltered, because I really wanted the journalist to, like, let's follow up on this, because what Dan said was, we got the young stuff, for the really young readers. And we're going to have the adult stuff still, even though everybody freaked out over Vertigo being canceled, even though they were just rebranded.
Yeah, they're just rebranded as Black Label. It doesn't matter if it says Vertigo or Black Label, Elseworlds or whatever else. It's still the same content.
Yeah, but despite those two things, and he said that they wanted to explore the generational differences, and he kind of, the way he worded it in the interview was almost like, okay, so we've got these core characters like Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman. These characters are like what the house has been built on. So those characters are going to stay the same. We're not going to mess with them anymore. I kind of took it at all. I mean, hopefully they even learned from, like, don't take the trunks off Superman.
Yeah, that was a huge thing. I'm going to tell you, I threw a huge fit about it.
I mean, yeah, I did too. So, but what was funny is he said, and he specifically pointed at the Raven book, in that these books are going to kind of be reimagined for a younger generation, because there's a lot of room for those characters to be developed and not necessarily changed, but developed into the direction for a younger audience, and therefore you'll have those ones that'll be kind of tailor-made for these new upcoming generations, and the core characters are going to be the same. And instead of just trying to, like, push them into a mold, what's going to end up happening is they're going to interact on a generational level. And it's like, so Superman might be kind of like your grandpa, like, back in my day, this is what I used to do, And
well, and see, this is where DC excels over every other company, and I think it's because they were first and they did their Golden Age heroes, and then when they redid the heroes for the Silver Age, they didn't use the exact same characters. They actually, passed that torch to an extent. The legacy of DC and the passing of the torch between, mentor and protege has been something that, to me at least, means more in those comics than anything else, because you can see the differences in, and this is the only time to which I'm going to say a character changes. Just because the mantle is passed, does not mean that the fundamentals of the character are changed, but the personality will change based on who is wielding that mantle. Now, there are some characters that you cannot pass the mantle. Okay? But
those characters, though, they've ceased to become characters. They've become more Americana. I mean, they belong to everybody.
Now, would it be outside of the realm to say that at some point Jonathan Kent would assume the title of Superman? I would think so, because his father will pass it to him. But this is like my Batman argument. One of my favorite Batmen of all time, as they went, was Dick Grayson.
No,
that was awesome. Bruce was gone. Dick picked up the mantle, and he ran with it, and segue into the Flash, which is by far, I think, the greatest legacy jump that they've ever made in DC. So you've got Jay Garrick being the classic Flash, then they introduce Barry Allen, and this is the argument that I give everybody. If you go back and you read those books with Barry, it was written through the 60s and through the 70s, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of campiness in the 60s. It was super goofy because they were still trying to find their footwork on what they wanted to do with comics. And then the 70s, Barry still stayed kind of campy. It was a little weird. And then the 80s rolled in, and we had Crisis on Infinite Earth. Barry died saving reality, right? Wally picks up the mantle in the last issue. Wally then proceeds for the next 20-some, 30 years being the Flash. He turns out to be a better Flash than Barry ever was. He did more, he could move faster, he had his abilities expanded beyond those of Barry's. He took out villains I don't think Barry could have taken out. And the entire time he did nothing but say, no, Barry Allen is the greatest Flash that ever lived, because he was my mentor, and he taught me everything that I know. And even everything I know now, I may have learned some things after or improved on. Barry taught me everything I knew.
Right.
So we all remember Barry as being this amazing Flash because Wally told us. Right. You know what I mean? And then we get to Rebirths. I'm not going to go on my Jeff Johns rant today.
Some mistakes were made.
The returns of these characters is where the mistakes were made, because they needed to continue. And if you wanted to pass that torch again, then set it up and pass the torch again. Don't take the Heroes in Crisis route and destroy Wally West. I'm very bitter about this right now. But, and even to toss that, the legacy thing aside, I kind of feel like Marvel has tried to do that a couple times, but they haven't really done it. I mean, Joe, you're a big Spider-Man guy. Aside from the Clone Saga.
Which, I was going to say, the Ben Reilly.
The Morales thing right now, right? Like, that's kind of the new passing of the torch thing. It's almost Morales and even Spider-Gwen to an aspect.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. What do you think on the whole passing the torch from Peter Parker to Miles Morales?
Well, again, it takes place in a different universe, too. It's not the regular universe. So it's passing a torch, but it's... You still have your core Peter Parker here, and you still have Miles Morales here, which they're now introducing into the core universe. Yeah, I mean, it was good to see, like, a different kind of Spider-Man, like a different take on what that person would be aside from the clones of just the core Peter Parker.
Now, I read the clone stuff in the 90s, and I'm kind of familiar with, Kane and Ben Reilly and all that type of stuff. But, like, the Miles stuff came at a time where I wasn't reading the Marvel side of things at all. And the most exposure to Miles that I've had so far has been through the Spider-Verse film. And it wasn't a bad movie, but I felt like there wasn't enough mentoring there between Parker and Morales to make that connection work smoothly. But, I mean, I don't know, in the setup for the comics, I mean, do we feel that it's an acceptable torch pass?
I would say not. It was more of a kind of like, I'll show you some things and then I die. And now you're left.
So it was kind of like the movie.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, on the opposite side, though, did you read the Captain America stuff going in after Civil War, and then Bucky picks up the mantle?
I did. My feeling on that was, like, Bucky, it was there used to be the old adage that, everybody comes back in the Marvel Universe except for Bucky. He was like the one guy that did not come back.
Uncle Ben may be the only one that's still left.
And sure enough, they brought him back, which was painful enough to see as it was. Winter Soldier grew on me, I'll be honest. I didn't care for the character much at first, but the longer it went, the more they fleshed it out, the more I got into it. But that was the thing. It's like, just about the time you got into this character as Winter Soldier, then it's like, oh, hey, he's Captain America. And you're like, no. I was just getting to where I liked him as Winter Soldier, and now you're ripping him away and making him Captain America. And, of course, the whole time, everybody that were Captain America fans, at least the ones that I knew, they all wanted Steve Rogers back. I mean, Steve Rogers, as soon as he's gone, he's wanted back again. I mean, almost immediately. So it's like, I don't know why Marvel keeps doing that. Leave him alone. Leave Steve Rogers alone. Okay, but then, to make matters worse, then, they shift it from him. Then they shift it back to Steve Rogers. Then they shift it again to Falcon, which makes no sense at all. And then we get into the whole Endgame thing, which, we don't even have enough time for me to rant on Endgame at this point.
No, but did you see what they're doing recently with Captain Marvel 8 that came out, right? So, like, apparently they're going to try to do this with Carol again. So we get Carol. She's, Miss Marvel or Warbird or whatever you want to call her for years, and dealt with X-Men stuff and a little bit with the Avengers and all that stuff. And honestly, I think she was a pretty B, C-list character for quite some time. But then you get, because of the movies and all that stuff, and they're just pushing her in your face now. Now we have a book where we're 8 issues in, and they go, we don't want you to be Captain Marvel anymore. Let's introduce a new character because you're part Kree or you're not full human or something. So now we have to have somebody else come in and take your place, and then we'll do something else with you.
Now, this has been a complaint of mine. I don't know, Joe, you might feel the same way about this, but I used to collect all kinds of Marvel books, Ghost Rider, Shang-Chi, and all that kind of stuff. In the 80s, about mid-80s, Marvel started getting into this, like, quantum loop of gimmicks. Like, the Hulk's gray now, the Hulk's not gray, the Hulk's smart, the Hulk's stupid again. They keep cycling through these things. Mm-hmm. And it's very frustrating as a reader because I'm not saying that they can't come out with good characters that way. Red Hulk's one of my favorite Marvel characters even now. But there's a backstory and a reason for Red Hulk and everything instead of just kind of like this continual cycle. Yeah. And what's sad is sometimes they get these cycles and they'll get a good writer on it, and that writer will explain the cycle very well, and it's like, okay, that makes sense. Don't touch it again. And they cannot resist. Marvel cannot resist going back and messing with it again. And as soon as they do, that's when it goes off the rails, and then we have a couple, 2 or 3 years of mediocre books, and it shifts back and forth, and then, finally they'll find somebody that can make a Miles Morales that's palatable for fans, and you think, well, that's good, and then it doesn't end there.
Yeah.
All right, so we've really kind of mined a lot there with the interview, let's shift gears into something that's immensely positive, and that's The Boys. Have you watched The Boys on Amazon? How do you feel about it? I watched it. I loved it. But hey,
man, I got an episode and a half left, and I'm going to tell you, when I'm done with it, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, so it's not exactly like the book, which, I didn't expect it to be. But the thing that is perfect about the show is it captures the characters from the book in the show. Even though they've changed some of the sequences and how some of the stuff is done, those characters are exactly the way that they would be interpreted in the book. And some of the casting is super spot on. I mean, you could look at the picture of the book and look at the person they cast, and I go, did they know this in 2008 when they wrote this book? Because it's dead on. Super dead on. Starlight, it looks exactly like Starlight in the book, man.
Some of the actors, too, are doing a great job because, if you're not familiar with Garth Ennis's kind of work, he's not a big superhero fan. So he tends to take, questionable characters like the Punisher and that kind of stuff and,
The Pro.
Yeah, work with that kind of stuff. But what was interesting about this, the Deep is, the guy that's playing him is just, the perfect sleazeball. I mean, you're just this guy couldn't be more unlikable.
There's a sequence in one of the episodes, and this isn't giving any... I'm not doing any spoilers. I'm not going to tell you all the crazy stuff that happens, but there's a sequence in there where they're filming, a commercial for a TV show, and they're on the beach, right? And they're picking up garbage, and he's like, oh, it's so bad, and the garbage is so bad. And a girl walks by, and in middle of, filming this, he turns and looks at her and he goes, hey, how's it going? And then it goes back to, oh, the beach is so bad, we got to clean it up. It's the same stuff over and over again, and it fits the character. And the amount of crap that he takes for being an Aquaman is just wonderful.
Yeah. And, of course, Homelander is... He's a different level of creepy.
Oh, man. I honestly, I think they dialed up the creepy notch from him from the book.
Yeah.
In the book, he was just kind of a jerk so much, but, he's psychotic and super weird, man. Just the whole thing in general, as the story goes, and as they bust open what's actually going on with the supers and stuff, because you don't have any idea going into this where this show ends up, because you think it's just about this guy who's upset about his girlfriend getting killed. If you watch the trailer, you're going to see that. And that happens in the first 5 minutes in the show.
Yeah.
And the stuff that comes from this, oh man.
Yeah.
And it's impressive. It's well written. I want more. I want a lot more.
It's already been approved for season 2, I believe.
Well, speaking of seasons,
yeah,
Swamp Thing, one more episode.
Yeah,
one more.
I'm a little bit behind, so I've got 2 episodes to watch, and then that'll be it.
I'm just
super
upset, man.
Disappointed.
It's the best show on TV. The Boys is right up there, but Swamp Thing just blows everything out of the water right now, man. There's just nothing better than Swamp Thing on TV right now. But it's super good. I absolutely love it. I want a lot more. From what I understand, that San Diego, they're kicking around possibly doing something with it. Whether it's another season or a movie or whatever.
Yeah, I'd heard a rumor that there might be a movie to help kind of wrap anything up that's kind of lingering out there. Hopefully that's the case.
I just want more seasons, man.
Have you seen either one of those shows? Yeah?
No, not yet. I
Yeah.
don't have DCU and Prime. I'm actually probably going to go home and re-sign up for it. 'Cause I do want to watch
Well, you're missing out on all fronts on that one. The season 2 of Titans will be here on September 6th.
Yeah.
And that show, it started out a little slow for me. I gave it a couple episodes, and I'm glad I did because it got better as it went. I do want to throw one thing out here, though, that you're going to be a little surprised about. Outsiders Part 2 of this 3rd season, the animated Young Justice show. First half of that, phenomenal. Second half, I'm about to jump shark. They're pulling a Marvel on me with the diversity stuff by changing some of my characters.
Yeah, I was reading about that today.
Out of nowhere, in the last episode, there was some stuff that popped up with Aqualad and Garth Tempest.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And, okay, so these are already, again, established characters in that universe. And they're making more changes to them. And the identity thing that they were doing with Halo is also strange, and they're starting to push agendas in the show, and that is not a show to which you need to be pushing agendas.
Well, and isn't that what the CW is for? Because I think that's all those shows on the CW do. I mean,
where I would put it if that was going to be the case.
If you want to put it on a CW, most of us won't watch that anyway. So, I mean, just to be honest, I mean, I'm a huge Superman fan, and I cannot watch Supergirl at this point at all.
Well, Supergirl comic is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's a fantastically well-written book. It's super exciting. It's a lot of fun all the time, and good stuff happens. All of her comics have been fun. Even when it wasn't Kara and it was the Matrix Supergirl, I still like those. The crap that's on TV, I can't stand.
Yeah.
It's terrible. They can't even give her own damn villain. They've got to give her Superman villains.
All right, we got just basically one last thing to cover, and that is some new games. We checked out a new game, God's Forge, right?
Yeah. So, God's Forge. I didn't know what to expect. It's kind of a card game, 4-player deal, 2 to 4 players. I think we're going to do a how to play video on it. Yeah. I really dug it, man. The rules are like reading a technical manual, rough. Let somebody teach you how to play it.
Yeah, I had fun. I demoed it, and I thought it was a good, solid game. I definitely would purchase it, particularly for the price point on, which was fairly
$30.
Yeah,
$30. Not bad. Super good.
So there was that.
And then Gen Con's coming up this weekend, so we might be able to sneak there for a day and see how that's going. We'll see. We'll have some news from that when it happens. But I think that's pretty much it.
That's all I got. Joe, you got anything to say?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Let's bag and board it.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye-bye.